Life in the Soviet Union was full of contradictions. On one hand, it promised equality, fairness, and a utopian future. But on the other hand, everyday people lived under constant surveillance, paranoia, and arbitrary punishment. The line between what was permitted and forbidden was often blurry, and crossing it, intentionally or accidentally, could land you in serious trouble. Here are 10 Soviet rules that could get you arrested for virtually nothing. Rule 1. Anti-Soviet agitation. The crime of anti-Soviet agitation was vague enough to apply to almost anything. Criticizing government policies at home, complaining about shortages at work, or even making casual jokes could qualify. Soviet humor itself became dangerous. A seemingly innocent joke about Brezhnev's speeches or Khrushchev's reforms could be enough for the KGB to label you an enemy of the state. Even a neighbor overhearing you grumbling about empty shelves could report you. Millions lived under constant fear of surveillance. Your neighbors, colleagues, even your own family could turn informant. Rule 2. Speculation. Selling anything privately could be labeled as speculation, a serious economic crime. If you bought jeans or Western records and resold them, you risked arrest. Many citizens who merely tried to survive economically ended up arrested, fined, or sent to labor camps. Black markets thrived precisely because shelves in official stores were frequently empty, so people regularly face this dilemma: break the law or go without basic comforts. Rule 3. Parasitism. Being unemployed in the Soviet Union wasn't just frowned upon, it was criminalized as social parasitism. Adults were required to officially work or study. If authorities deemed you weren't contributing sufficiently to society, you faced prison or forced labor. Artists, musicians, writers, and intellectuals without formal jobs risked charges of parasitism. Even Nobel laureate poet Joseph Brodsky was convicted of parasitism and exiled, simply for pursuing poetry outside official channels. Rule 4. Forbidden literature. Possessing or distributing anti-Soviet books or magazines from the West was forbidden. Owning a novel by George Orwell or Alexander Solzhenitsyn, or even foreign religious texts, could mean jail. An underground literary culture known as samizdat thrived, where banned texts were secretly typed, copied by hand, and passed around discreetly. But getting caught with samizdat meant serious consequences. People risked imprisonment simply for reading something the government didn't approve of. Rule 5. Unauthorized travel. Traveling within the USSR required permits, and leaving the country was virtually impossible for ordinary people. Attempting to cross a border illegally, or even showing too much interest in foreign travel, could lead to immediate arrest. In Stalin's time, even innocent travel for family visits required bureaucratic approval. Citizens needed internal passports, documents controlling every move. Being caught outside your permitted region meant detention, interrogation, or worse. Rule 6. Foreign contacts. Any interaction with foreigners, especially Westerners, could be labeled suspicious. Speaking with a tourist, accepting foreign currency or gifts, or corresponding with overseas relatives could all be considered espionage or betrayal. Many Soviet citizens avoided foreigners altogether, knowing KGB agents monitored hotels, restaurants, and popular attractions. Even genuine friendships were fraught with risk. Soviet citizens who socialized with outsiders faced interrogation and imprisonment. Rule 7. Religious practices. Officially, the USSR allowed some religious worship, but it was heavily monitored and controlled. Practicing religion openly or unofficially, like celebrating Easter at home or teaching religious texts privately, was frequently criminalized. Underground religious groups, particularly Protestant churches, Catholics in the Baltics, Muslims in Central Asia, and Jews across the USSR, were routinely targeted, their leaders imprisoned or sent to labor camps. Rule 8. Listening to Western media. Tuning into Western radio stations like Voice of America or Radio Free Europe was banned. The KGB aggressively monitored airwaves, seeking out people secretly listening to foreign broadcasts. People went to great lengths to hide their radios or listen under covers, knowing a neighbour overhearing even faint snippets of Western broadcasts could mean interrogation and imprisonment. Even discussing Western news openly was dangerous. Rule 9. Artistic expression. Art, music, and writing had to adhere strictly to Soviet realism, glorifying socialist achievements. Any deviation, abstract paintings, experimental music, or poems that seemed ambiguous or critical could be considered subversive. Famous artists like composer Dmitri Shostakovich or novelist Boris Pasternak faced severe scrutiny. Even iconic Soviet directors like Andrei Tarkovsky faced censorship. Simple artistic freedom was considered a political threat, punishable by arrest or exile. Rule 10. Private farming. Growing your own food beyond a tiny personal garden plot was strictly regulated. Selling your surplus privately or expanding your personal garden without state approval could be considered economic sabotage. Farmers who attempted to keep grain or vegetables to feed their families, especially during Stalin's forced collectivization, faced severe punishment, arrest, or execution. Millions starved precisely because private food production was aggressively suppressed. These rules weren't merely random acts of oppression, they were calculated tools of control. By keeping the population fearful and uncertain about what constituted a crime, the state created widespread self-censorship. People policed themselves, wary of accidentally committing offences. This surveillance extended everywhere: workplaces, schools, neighbourhoods, even family dinners. The vagueness and unpredictability were the real power behind these rules. Authorities could punish anyone, anytime, for anything, keeping everyone cautious and obedient. Millions faced prison, labour camps, exile, or worse, not for genuine crimes, but simply for existing in ways the state disapproved of. The legacy of these rules is felt deeply even today in post-Soviet societies. Distrust of neighbours, suspicion of authorities, fear of surveillance. These lingering traumas persist decades after the USSR's collapse. The Soviet system didn't just punish obvious dissent, it criminalized everyday life itself. The result was a society constantly anxious, perpetually watched, and deeply scarred by mistrust and fear. Millions of lives were disrupted, broken, or destroyed, simply because arbitrary rules made ordinary life potentially criminal. The lesson here isn't just about history, it's about freedom, vigilance, and what happens when states wield unchecked power. Because the truth is, the most terrifying aspect of these rules wasn't just their brutality, it was their sheer arbitrariness. You never knew when you'd be next.